Welcome to this screencast on evaluating and comparing in the individual differences area, looking at Freud and Baron-Cohen et al. Okay, so if we remember, if we're going to look at evaluation first of all. So the first thing I want to do is to look at the Baron-Cohen study, which is the one that we've just been looking at recently, and we're going to look at the methodological issues within this area. Okay, so if we just kind of have a list of the methodological issues down the side there, you can see them all in red, and we'll start at the top and we'll start with the method. Okay, so the method in the Baron-Cohen study is a quasi-experiment with a matched participants design. Okay, so remember, a quasi-experiment is one whereby the actual variable, the independent variable, is not manipulated by the experimenter, but is actually naturally occurring. And matched participants is a type of experimental design. Just have a little look in your notes. What were the participants matched on? Okay. Validity. Validity is a measurement of the accuracy. We can have internal validity, is it measuring what it says it's measuring? External validity, would we get the same results with different populations or in different situations or at different times, etc. And we have concurrent validity in this particular study as well. Okay, does the actual eyes test in this particular situation, does it relate to previous ways of measuring autism or theory of mind in this particular case? Okay, reliability is the consistency of measurements. Okay, sampling bias. Well, this is mostly a self-selected sample. So was there any bias in this particular situation? Ethical issues. Was there any consent issues? Was there any psychological harm, debriefing, that sort of thing? Ethnocentrism. Well, this was a British sample. Okay, does that provide us with any issues, perhaps? And types of data. Well, we had quantitative and we had qualitative data in this particular situation. We can comment, can't we, on the strengths and the weaknesses of those types of data. Okay, well, let's have a look at the first PEC that I've done. So I'm going to go through this PEC with you now. If you want to, you can pause the video at any time, just have a little look and see what you think yourself. Maybe compare it to ones that you've done. Okay, so the one I'm doing here is about the research method, and I've tried to pick ones that we don't do as often, just to kind of show you the ways in which these can be done and the way they're put together. Okay, so what I try to avoid is anything which has got the study within the point. So we're going to try to think about Baron-Cohen as a study within the individual differences areas. So all of our evaluation points are going to be talking about research within the individual differences area. So in other words, it's a kind of a nice little shortcut to be able to evaluate the whole area at the same time. Okay. Right, so our point, research within the individual differences area. Okay, so when we talk about individual differences area, obviously with our particular examples that we've got so far are Freud and Baron-Cohen. You'll have other ones when you finish the course, but that's the ones we're going to be looking at. But that's our context. They often use quasi-experiments. Now, what I've then gone on to do is to give a definition of what I mean by quasi-experiments. So we're not just leaving it out there. So uses quasi-experiments where the independent variable is not manipulated by the researcher, meaning that research may not support psychology as a science. So instead of just saying, there you go, it's quasi-experiments, make of that what you will, I've then made a little bit of a link there and said, okay, that there's an issue with that, because remember, we're trying to evaluate it, we're trying to evaluate the method in this particular situation, and I've said it may not support psychology as a science. And that's quite a bold claim, isn't it? Because we've said experiments generally do. We'll see how this one works through, and you can see exactly how I've done that. In the example then, so let's make it dead obvious to the examiner, for example, okay? Let's not make them guess, okay, where the example is. So for example, in Baron-Cohen study, this is the context we're going to use in this particular situation. Baron-Cohen study on autism, 3 groups of people were tested for theory of mind using the eyes test. These groups were autistic, Asperger's adults, normal adults, and Tourette's adults. The independent variable is therefore naturally occurring and not manipulated by the researcher. Just think about what I've done there. That particular example uses Baron-Cohen. Okay, so that's what we're looking at the moment, which obviously was in the individual differences area, so it's relevant. But it just uses the information about quasi-experiments. There's no great stuff there about it being done in Cambridge or about what autism is and all the claims that Baron-Cohen makes. It's just about the quasi-experiment part of the study. So it's relevance, yeah? And then I'll comment, this is a weakness of studies in this area as cause and effect relationships cannot be claimed, which is a feature of scientific research. Okay, so you can see what I've done there. So, I suppose I could have put that in the point, but, I've not done, because I think the comment is about making a comment on the point. Okay, so that's what we've done. We've claimed it's a weakness. And the reason we've done that is because we can't for sure claim that cause and effect relationships can be a feature of this particular study. The problem with that, of course, is that cause and effect relationships are a feature of science. Therefore, it doesn't support psychology as science, which I could have put there in the comments, I suppose. But scientific research is the same sort of thing, isn't it? And then at the end there, I'm going to put a little bit of more context on it. So let's bring it back to Baron-Cohen. So e.g., Baron-Cohen is unable to establish whether autism is responsible for deficits in theory of mind or whether this is due to another variable such as the effect of having limited social relationships. Okay, so you can see lots and lots of context there about Baron-Cohen, but if you actually strip down this particular PEC, you can see it's quite straightforward, really. We've got quasi-experiments not supported by psychoscience. We've said what it is about Baron-Cohen's study that makes it a quasi-experiment, and then we've said what's wrong with that particular type of methodology. And all we've done is to layer a bit of context on it. Okay, hope that's helpful for that one. Got another one coming up. Okay, sampling bias. Again, a methodological issue that we don't tend to look at that often. So what have I done here then? So again, we're using Baron-Cohen as an example, and we're thinking about Baron-Cohen as being a study within the individual differences area. So research within the individual differences area often uses samples that are biased, which may lead to findings that are limited in their usefulness. Right, okay. So I've said that the biased samples, could have left it there, I guess, but you know what? Let's go a little bit further. Okay, I'm going to make a point here. I'm going to say biased samples are problematic because they're limited in their usefulness. All right. Okay. Right. Example. So again, for example, making it obvious to the examiner what it is you're doing. So, for example, in Baron-Cohen's study on autism, in Group 1, there were 13 men and 3 women. As the study found that the women were better at the eyes task, the large number of men may have a negative effect on the results. The participants should have been matched for gender. Okay, so you can see that that particular part of the example, that example there, is all to do with sampling bias. Okay, it's nothing to do with anything else. It's just to do with sampling bias. Yeah. And the last part, this is a weakness of studies in this area as biased samples mean that results cannot be easily generalized to the target population. So you see, I'm making a comment on the point. E.g., the effect of autism and Asperger's on theory of mind development cannot be applied to both genders equally. Bit more context there, just using the Baron-Cohen study to just kind of, give that little bit more detail there just to finish that point off. Okay, so pause the video at this point if you want to have a good look through that and make sure that you understand what's been said. Right, going on to debates then. Okay, so how can we use debates to evaluate the individual differences area using Baron-Cohen as an example? We're going to look at reductionism in this particular case. Okay, so let's have a look again. So research within the individual differences area often produces reductionist explanations for behavior. Reductionism is now going to be defined, which are oversimplistic and lack validity. But yeah, I suppose I could put in brackets there, like accuracy or something like that, just to match it up. But you can see the basic idea. So we've got reductionism, but we're not just leaving it like that. We're talking about the fact that that's a problem because it lacks validity. For example, in Baron-Cohen's study on autism, the research indicates that an adult will struggle to recognize emotion on the eyes task because of a deficit in their theory of mind as a result of autism or Asperger's. This explanation dismisses other reasons that may contribute to this deficit. Right, can you see? So I'm looking at the conclusions now. The conclusions of this particular experiment suggest that theory of mind deficits are all due to autism or Asperger's. Okay, just dismisses anything else that might have contributed to that. Okay, so that's the bit that's relevant in that particular study to reductionism. Again, this is a weakness. I haven't got a downer on Baron-Cohen study. It's just an interesting way to look at it this way. Okay, so this is a weakness of studies in this area, as reductionist explanations fail to account for other factors that may be responsible for a behavior and therefore lack validity. Okay, so you can see there that there could be lots and lots of different reasons why that contributes. Okay, they all kind of merge together, but by making it a reductionist explanation that lacks validity, it fails to explain the behavior in its fullest amount. Okay, e.g., many other factors such as social isolation may have a part to play in the theory of mind deficit seen in the eye study. So again, just a little bit of extra context there. Again, pause that if you want to have a look at that a little bit further and make some sense of it. I'm going to use usefulness now because you might think, like I say, I have a bit of a downer on this study. I haven't. I think it's a great study. So in this particular case, we're able to pull out a strength of it. So research within individual differences area often produces useful findings that have practical applications. Don't really need to define much about what usefulness and practical applications are because they're pretty much obvious, really, aren't they? So for example, in Baron-Cohen's study on autism, the research was able to demonstrate the effectiveness of a new diagnostic test for adults with autism and Asperger's syndrome. Okay, so you can see there, that's the application part of that particular study, isn't it? We've got a new test. That's good. Yeah. Comment. This is a strength of studies in this area, as findings can be applied to find real-world applications that can be of use to vulnerable groups. E.g., the EYES test can be used to diagnose Asperger's and autism in adulthood and give access to strategies that increase experience of reading other people's mental states. Okay, so again, we've just kind of laid on a little bit of context at the end there. We've got a very kind of, I suppose you could think of it as being a generic type of evaluation PEC with just that little bit of layering of Baron-Cohen on top of it just to contextualize it. But you can see it all links back to the individual differences area. Okay, moving on. Right, we're going to talk a little bit about comparing now. So we've got Freud and we've got Baron-Cohen, and I've got a little table here which again might be useful for you to get down in your notes, or if you haven't got something like this already. And I've kind of put down the issues and debates down one side. I've not put all the debates down, but the ones that are most relevant, I suppose. And you can have a little look at that, see what you think. You can see a comparison there, and you can basically work out what the differences and similarities are just by looking at that. I don't think there's anything which is difficult. Science, Baron-Cohen, yes-ish. Okay, coming back to that quasi-experiment I did before. Right, so what I'm going to do in the next two slides is to go through some P paragraphs, okay, which are your comparison ones. The first one's going to be a similarity, and then there's going to be a difference, okay? Okay, so Freud and Baron-Cohen. So in these particular examples here, when you're comparing, you can put your evidence in your points. That's absolutely fine in terms of naming the studies. Okay, so a similarity paragraph uses the PEEE format. Okay. So the first similarity we're going to look at here, I'll just read it here. Similarity between Freud's study and Baron-Cohen's study is that they both provide deterministic explanations for behavior. Okay, they support the determinism side of the free will determinism debate. Okay, so this means that they suggest that behavior is predictable and a result of internal, external forces beyond our control. This is the bit the students very often miss out. They don't explain what they mean by the similarity that they've picked out, or the difference. Okay, then we're just going to use the examples. So, for example, in Baron-Cohen's study in autism, the research indicated that a deficit in theory of mind was a result of autism Asperger's syndrome, which is a developmental disorder. This is a deterministic explanation, as the deficit in theory of mind is seen as a predictable outcome of internal forces over which participants have no control. Right, now you can see what I've done there. I've said what it is that they found out, okay, because that's the most important part. And then I've explained to the reader why that particular finding is deterministic, okay, bringing it right back to the point in the explanation before, okay. You can see how that works. Then we're going to put some Freud in, okay. Also, Freud, on his study of little Hans, concluded that phobias were an expression of a repressed Oedipus complex in which Hans desired his mother and was jealous of his father. This is also a deterministic explanation. As a result of the Oedipus complex, and subsequent phobic behavior is seen as predictable and caused by internal processes beyond the control of little Hans. Okay, so again, I've just got the little bit about Freud there in terms of what he found out, okay, which is most relevant, and then I've linked it